The moment the Fairmont gates close, a long-buried secret blows open. Sharon decides to face Vernon and admit they share a daughter, a truth powerful enough to shake the entire order of power. In this video, we'll unpack the simmering anger, the inner conflicts, and the chain of counter-moves as Vernon launches a cleanup campaign against hostile forces while Sharon pays the price for choosing the truth. Who's manipulating the narrative? Who's pushing them into a corner, and is the child the key or the spark? Watch to the end so you don't miss the most crucial clue, and if you enjoy deep dive analysis, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for the next twists. The atmosphere inside the house, long governed by iron discipline and those unwritten codes of the upper class, abruptly warps the moment Sharon chooses the point of no return. She will confess, she will drag into the light the secret she has cinched shut with silence for years like a hidden seam beneath velvet power. In that instant, every strand of barbed suspicion, every wall of defensive wisdom, every ancient compromise erected to blind the inner eye turns into a backdrop for a violent swell rising from regions too dark for anyone to touch. Sharon sees before her a sequence of consequences from which there is no retreat. The emergence of a daughter standing outside the sanctioned family ledger, a link erased from household history out of fear and calculation, a gravitational vortex potent enough to tilt the axis of power relationships. In this new configuration, Sharon is both confessor and ruthless judge of herself, weighing and reweighing her sins, counting the holidays she performed serenity, the dinners during which her gaze skated past an empty chair that embodied what must not be named. Yet if truth is a blade of release, it is also the saw that scrapes identity down to splinters, demanding payment in reputation, relationships, and the scaffolding of self-respect that has held her life together for all these years. Vernon, meanwhile, sensed the storm closing in even before it acquires a name. As the head of a family and the nexus of overlapping obligations and interests, he knows every leak exacts a price, every secret kept too long accrues creditors waiting for maturity. His ambition is not only to preserve the edifice but to refashion the order in his own way, to purge the murk fed by hostile forces in the dark, to sever the creeping roots that have penetrated the proud security fences of their enclave. Late-night calls, confidential memos, quiet fund transfers, agreements inked with glances rather than pens, all of it has pushed him to a submerged crossroads: launch a cleansing counteroffensive or drown in the mud of old compromises. He chooses the campaign, the path that tolerates not a single grain of sand in the eye, the path that discards lukewarm allies and prunes the slender bridges linking him to power blocks known for whiplash betrayals. But everything arrives too fast when the truth of a shared child breaks the surface, flipping him from hunter to quarry, hemmed in by an inner adversary with no single face. Deep down lies the fear he never dared to name, the terror of being endangered by his own past, of losing to an earlier version of himself, the man who once placed desire and hunger on the table and exchanged them for a memory placed under seal. Anger, like magma, snakes through every corner of the home. It begins with Sharon as she realizes that years of silence did not buy absolution, they only gifted the outside enemy another instrument of annihilation. She is angry at herself for choosing survival over confrontation, angry at the surrounding system that funneled her into a moral tunnel with no exit, angry at the politely smiling faces at charity galas that once made her believe honor was armor thick enough. She is angry at Vernon for his composure, the coolness of a man accustomed to determining outcomes in silence, because she knows that composure is purchased by compressing feeling and shelving anything that does not fit a strategy. The anger distills into resolve to expose a new order in which her child no longer hangs at the perimeter. Yet precisely then, she senses herself stepping deeper into another maze where every movement can be read as a tactic, every gesture labeled a strike. For Vernon, the fury is a hybrid alloy of weary pride and a dread of identity seizure. He is angry at the outside operators who have extended their hands into the living room, at allies who swore loyalty and merely waited for their opening, at youth itself for leaving behind a biological debt capable of fracturing his structure of control. But the hottest rage is the feeling of being cornered into choosing between two species of truth: the truth of order, preserving genealogy, capital, authority, and the truth of blood, acknowledging a child as a non-negotiable presence. Choose the former and he may keep a steady hand on the helm, but the price is becoming the cold variant of the adversaries he has always despised. Choose the latter and a hairline fracture will streak through the trust architecture, forcing explanations to those whose honor and interests are lashed to his. None of the choices are clean. Each road leads into stains that cannot be laundered, and he must learn to stand in those stains without letting them pull him under. The power architecture around them begins to creak, the sound of either a collapse or a refit. Crafty women on family boards feign talk of arts and education while measuring inheritance with their eyes. Legal advisors perfume the air with the slick scent of clauses and conditions. Business partners perform reluctant goodwill, testing how long the moral varnish will hold. Along a different frequency, hostile networks smell opportunity. A break in the spine of honor is a door into financial controls. A child beyond the pale is a card for manufacturing public narrative. A woman deciding to speak truth is a target worth shooting. They seed leaks that mix a trace of fact with toxins, concocting a story that feels plausible. The dynasty is rotting, the patriarch has let emotion steer, the woman aims to cloud clear water, the child is the product of a dark plan. Once the crowd catches the bait, the swarm begins. Sharon retreats inward to brace her spirit, auditing every remnant that can be weaponized. Financial history, trips from years ago, the under-the-table network she leaned on in private crises, emails she thought deleted but merely buried in waiting for excavation. She must draw a personal risk map, marking potholes, annotating pivot points where the narrative can be rerouted, preparing a defense that refuses the trap of pleading for pity yet stands steelhard in establishing fact. She knows she will meet ice-cold eyes, suspended nods of performative forgiveness, helping hands that measure her remaining value while appearing to lift. She also knows that if she fears entering the lair of fear itself, the child will remain forever nailed to an invisible verdict. That verdict is not only society's. It is the long rope of stories replicated across generations, where women are counseled to keep quiet to preserve the shell of happiness. Meanwhile, Vernon deploys the cleanup like a silent campaign, scanning dubious funding channels, severing leaky nodes, rebuilding personnel firewalls, persuading a few old loyals to return rather than convert into enemies. He knows any gap will serve as a lever for outsiders to pry open the lid of a pot already shaking. Every plan requires a governing software, and the one blind spot is the heart, the one system he cannot regulate by process or policy. He contemplates legitimizing the child through a sequence of legal rights, yet the sequence cannot dodge backstage inquiries: who knew and when, who chose concealment, who stands to gain most if the story blows up. He cannot ignore that adversaries will spin the very act of legitimization as proof of weakness, as evidence that he is guided by a private tale rather than a collective vision. From the perimeter, an undertow of side events coils up. A family-backed charity is suddenly audited to the bone, a suburban expansion hits legal snags over land, a long-standing partner stalls at the signature line, an investigative piece starts naming the contradictions between civic vows and the reflex of elite concealment. The universe itself appears collusive in driving the two into an oxygen-starved chamber, where every breath draws like swallowings of nails. Sharon recognizes the subtlest punishment fate devises, forcing her to choose either to become the emblem of error to save her child, or to shelter beneath a beautiful story to save the rest of her life. Vernon recognizes that the seam between a leader and a father is not drawn by law or tradition but by the extent of loss he is willing to endure to protect what he once forfeited. Suspicion swivels toward those presumed outside the frame. Did a family member know for years and sharpen it into a pocket knife? Did a trusted advisor barter intel for favors across the aisle? Did the child, grown in the penumbra, receive a distorted legend rigid enough to fuel the wish to burn everything down? Questions are not filled with answers, they are arranged as snares, set along the footpaths of each actor. In this tight grid of traps, kindness grows embarrassed, trust becomes a luxury, and pride hangs like a gemmed collar so heavy it bows the spine. None of them remains yesterday's version. Sharon is no longer the woman who smiles on cue and keeps silence on schedule. She becomes the one who sets her own terms, redefining honor by placing responsibility and truth ahead of crowd optics. Vernon is no longer the man who governs with discreet nods. He begins to tolerate a face he has never seen in the mirror, a face scored by a crack from brow to heart, yet no less authoritative, for real authority may reside in endurance, in standing inside the storm while defending the one who must be defended. If there is any struggle of conspiracies worth naming, it is not solely the flurries of attack and counterstrike among external factions, it is the war within the battlefield where Sharon and Vernon strip away the disguises layered over themselves, admit they have been afraid, wrong, selfish, clever, prone to flight. When night descends, the Enclave's lights still glitter like counterfeit stars, but their true sky has changed color. A new order forms not by decree or press release, but by difficult decisions etched into frayed nerves. Sharon drafts tomorrow, listing the people she must face, the files to unseal, the memories to withstand. Vernon marks targets to cut, doors to close, bridges to keep even if only as a fraying cord. The child, the whirlpool's center, has yet to step into the frame, but every straight line in the picture converges there. And just as both think they have stabilized their breathing, a small detail blooms like a black mote on white silk, an old photograph mailed anonymously, a timestamp that fails to align, a signature on a temporary guardianship record someone once fabricated. Are these mere accidents, or is there a hand arranging the pieces to push the story toward a fresh brink? Is Sharon's confession a door to freedom, or the pivot that loosens every other Pandora's box she never planned to touch? Is Vernon's determination to cleanse a strategy of salvation, or the first swing of a pickaxe against the bedrock he assumed granite solid? No one can answer now, and perhaps that uncertainty is the very core of the new obsession, living beside an unfinished truth, stepping across a floor that cracks underfoot, resisting an ecosystem of interests agile enough to mutate with each blink of public opinion. Yet within the smothering air a method to breathe still flickers: keep moving, keep reordering by the lights they trust, keep paying the price when payment is due. For if they refuse to move, the wall will press so tight that every reaction curdles into negativity and futility. If they advance, even with bloodied steps, at least the path belongs to them, and somewhere around an unrevealed bend, when the storm has wrung itself dry, there may be a different horizon where the child ceases to be a shadow, where Sharon ceases to be a sentence, where Vernon ceases to be a stonewall, and where honor is no longer cosmetic lacquer but the thick grain of wood that absorbs the hammering of life and still keeps its beautiful lines. The night moves like a heavy curtain, yet no one inside Fairmont finds an unbroken sleep. Sharon sits before the glass window, counting the breaths she has long forced into even rhythm, while across the city Vernon reviews the ties he has just severed, listening to the hollows forming inside the power structure he spent years building. The truth has been released like a freed bird, but its wings also beat up the dust of the past, clouding every line of sight. The child, the whirlpool center, has not stepped into the spotlight, yet her shadow already stretches across each decision, each memo, each hesitant handshake. Observers are counting down, adversaries hold their breath for the first misstep, and former allies begin to choose sides through small, unreadable actions. An anonymous photograph, a timestamp slightly off, a temporary guardianship file with a strange signature, 3 stray fragments that compose a score of unease, as if someone were rehearsing the overture to a new tragedy. Morning will come, and they will have to step into the light with roles no one wanted, Sharon as a walking confession, Vernon as a declaration under trial by fire. The cleanup plan will expose its hairline fractures, because every purge triggers a chain reaction. The discarded may turn accusers, the neutral may become the ones holding the scales. The unanswered question lives in the space between them: will truth be strong enough to redefine honor, or will honor once again be defined by clandestine compromises? When the child appears, will she be the key that unlocks new doors, or the mirror that reveals everything they once fought to hide? And if there is an unseen hand conducting the tempo of this tale, does it belong to an old enemy, a silent relative, or a force that has yet to be named? No one knows. Perhaps the only certainty is that the retreat has vanished, and every next step will press deeper footprints into the soft ground of choice. As the first church bell peals the day awake, Sharon folds the list of things she must face, Vernon locks the files of the night, and the sky over Fairmont keeps its unpromising gray. This is not an ending, nor a beginning. It is the compressed weight of a moment that will force them to answer, between order and blood, between image and truth, between silence and freedom. What will they choose when none of the prices come discounted for anyone?